Hello and welcome to Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is August 16th, 2024. I'm recording this on Friday. It's still Friday for me, but Bitcoin has started the weekend already. Bitcoin has opened its Saturday candle. So we're going to follow up with where we left off on Wednesday's video. And we're going to talk about what needs to happen for the bulls on the chart, what the bears need to do if they want to push price further down, and kind of what to look for over this weekend for both the bulls and the bears in this case. Now, Bitcoin is still in a daily downtrend, and not much has changed in that regard. Now, there is some opportunity for bulls here, but we saw the high. Oh, let's change that. I was charting and drawing some arrows in preparation for the support and resistance chart that's going to be coming up here. But we're going to talk trend, support and resistance, volatility, and then momentum. But in this case, we can see Bitcoin is still in a downtrend. We had the lower high come in here at around 62,800 or so, just shy of 62,800. And, Bitcoin did try for a nice swing low here, but it did not close that low. It needed to close back above around $61,000. So it did get rejected in and around the 61,800 level, about $1,000 lower than the 62,800 wick high on the lower high, and continued down to test into another important level that we're going to look at here in a moment at just shy of that 55,850. So since then, that was in Thursday's candle. We saw Friday's candle recover and try to turn things around. Did test the top side of the Thursday candle just shy of $60,000. So this has kind of started to change the picture a little bit because it has met some of the criteria that we talked about in terms of support and resistance, and it's still holding those areas. So what do we need to see from here? Well, we need to see a low set on the daily. Now, a low will be set on the daily on any closes above Thursday's high here. It's basically Thursday and Friday's high. And that's around 59,883. So about $59,900 to $60,000. Bitcoin will set a technical closing low. What I will tell you, though, is as a trader, I want to see it close above Wednesday's open. So we had the close open from Tuesday into Wednesday. That is at 60,603. Now, the reason why I say that is because this was a rejection, and this was a common rejection that we saw back here on Sunday coming into the week. So I do want to see that area closed above to really start getting excited for Bitcoin to possibly try to break the downtrend up here at that 62,800 level. And if it were to put in a higher low here, at minimum, I would look for it to test up into the $60,000 level a little bit more, but we need to see it closing above that 60,600. So again, to set the low on a closing basis and set this swing low, which is still a swing low, it's a valid swing low. It is a swing lower low, but in order to set the actual swing low and closing low in place, we need to see closes above $60,000. From there, I want to see a subsequent, daily or important time frame below the daily, like a 12-hour closing above around 60,600, to at least look further up to 61,800 at the failures here, which is right around the close open high, and this being the lower high, is around that 61,800 level, and then the wick high there at 62,800. So about $1,000 between the close open high and the wick high. That would be a higher low, higher high structure. That would be a trend reversal, and I would be looking further up. We'll talk about some of those areas to the upside in a little bit. But essentially, what I would be looking for is something like this. And just because I'm looking for it does not mean that it's going to play out. So this is just an example. I'd be looking for something like this. And that is where we could get a trend reversal. So now I do want to reiterate that any closes and therefore wicks, any wicks above the $49,000 would be higher low wicks. But we want to see higher low wicks with higher low closes, and any closes above this close open lower low of this entire move and the lower low thus far for the past couple of months, that is at $54,000. That does mean that Bitcoin could come all the way down and test it. It can even test below it on a wick basis. As long as it's closing above this close open, higher low equal low is in play, and would count for a full trend reversal. So I did want to reiterate that to kind of clear things up for some people that might be new. That would be a trend reversal should it put in a higher low. And then, of course, it does have to break that lower high to break trend with a higher low, higher high structure in place. That would be the trend reversal. Now, I did want to call this out again. If we got a closing lower low, but a higher low wick relative to the $49,000 low, and then broke the downtrending high on a closing basis, then that would be a higher low wick or a higher low swing. With a closing lower low, we would just need to see a closing higher low to complete that trend reversal from there. So that would be the next criteria. And then anything further than the wick low is just continuation of the downtrend. So, oh, I just dropped my phone out of my pocket. Sorry if you heard that. Let's talk about support and resistance areas. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I apologize about my voice yet again. Just I've not been having a good go of it, and I'm not being very kind to my voice here lately with all of the different events that I've been doing on Twitter for the Twitter Spaces, and then, of course, some impromptu live streams as well. So let's go ahead and turn on the accumulation distribution zones. That is basically the zones of support and resistance locally here. And we'll get rid of the Bollinger Band set here because we're going to talk about volatility here in just a moment. But let's take a look at support and resistance, just pure support and resistance. So Bitcoin did essentially, I would call this target fulfilled to the downside. We saw that Bitcoin was dancing right along the top side of the risk zone at 58.4. Once it began to lose that in the lower term timeframes below the daily, 4 or 6 hour, it did run our area there at 57,650. And then subsequently, we had talked about this on Wednesday, is any closes lower than that, even in the lower term timeframes, likely pointed down to this 55,850. Now, it did pull up just shy there, about $320 or so. Maybe a little less, maybe like 270 at 56,120. So that is essentially the next area. If we were to see Bitcoin come back down below 58,400 on a 4 or 6 hour close, then we do need to be aware of the close open here at 57,550 to that wick low at 56,120. Anywhere below there is the close open lower low of the prior downtrend here at that 55,850. And that would be the next logical target. Any breakdown below there. And we're looking over to the wick low here from the prior downtrend. And that is at 53.5. And of course, we have that $54,000 lower low close of the current move. So fair game between essentially 55,850 and that 54K. Any breakdown below 54K, and then 53.5 on a closing basis would be, targeting this target one of distribution at around $53,000 to $50,000. And this swing low at $49,000 is fair game. Any closes below here, and I do mean closes, we can see swings below, but if we see any closes below, then I would be looking for continuation down into target 2. And that is essentially 48 to 45. On the technicals, it is the prior cycle monthly closing high from 2021 that was the lower high that kicked off the bear market at 48,240 to 45.5. We do need to update our electrical cost here. We'll do that in just a moment, but let's go ahead and talk about possible upside. So if Bitcoin does put in a low, it can put in a low below the recover zone. So again, I want to see Bitcoin closing above the recover zone here at around 60,000 to 60,300. And of course, as I mentioned, I want to see 60,600 closed above to really start targeting 61.8 to 62.8. And if we did see 62.8 closed above, even in medium-term timeframes, I would be raising my target again to 63.8. Of course, that's this lower high over here. Anywhere above there, especially on daily closes, I start targeting the pivot zone up here. My arrow's covering it. My apologies, but that's around 65 to 65.5 on the bottom side Top side of that is this ever important level. I pointed this out and I'm going to keep pointing it out. This 67,272 was the first major lower high of this entire range. Now we did have lower highs, but we had higher lows. Right after the all-time high was put in, this was the first major lower high at 67,272 that kicked off lower low, essentially after the first big lower low. We had that first big lower high, then lower lows again. That was at 56,500. Then we had 53,500, so on and so forth. So just understand that this 67,272 is very important. It even held price up when it had its little double top on the daily at $72,000. Once that area broke down, you'll see that we had the first lower high right here, which is in the run the highs above here at 68 to 70. And then, of course, we had another lower high spike where after 67,272 was lost, you could see that that area is being held after the first lower high up here. And then that area is being held when it broke down. It tried to run back there. 67,272 was perfect resistance and then led to this major downtrend here of the prior downtrend. So again, above the recover zone at 63.8, 65 to 65.5 here at the bottom side of the pivot zone is fair game to around that 67,272. Lower term time frame closures above there, and I would start targeting the run the highs zone here, and that is the first major lower high put in here, and this was a major one because it started to break down from here, and it rejected essentially twice in this area, and that's the run the highs zone between 68 and $70,000 here, where we saw the last high come in. Anywhere above there, I'm looking for the all-time high zone to be ran around 71.5 to 73.35. Above there, I'm really looking at a zone of about 73 to 75, 75 to 78, 78 to 80, and then mid to low 80s from there. So let's go ahead and update our electrical cost, which means that we're going to go over to a light chart, and in fact, a very, very white chart. So I'm going to give you a moment to prepare your eyes. We're going to caprioli.com, and we're going to check on the Bitcoin production cost floor for electrical cost, and it has moved up, I think, like $20 to 45,481. So let's go ahead and update that on our chart. Yep, in fact, it was just $20, so 45,481, and it is essentially directly in line with the bottom side of our target 2, which is the monthly close open there at around 45.5 from the bear market lower high from 2022. So, yeah, that's pretty funny how that is all just lining up and has a lot of confluence with the prior cycle right now. And you'll find that I say that, but I already knew it was going to have confluence. But this is more that you're always going to find confluences like this across your chart. So, and you should, if you're not finding confluence, then there's probably an issue with the analysis, or things are moving very, very fastly, and it's probably very, very fast, and it's probably not in a very good direction. All right, so let's go ahead and no, you know what? We're going to keep the accumulation distribution on. Let's go ahead and look at volatility. We covered trend. Let's cover support and resistance, and then we'll cover volatility as it relates to the important areas of our chart here on the daily. We're going to zoom in, so the zones are going to be, the zone labels will be off the screen here, but I do know the zones pretty well by heart, so I will explain them as we go. Now, we have confluence right overhead at that 60,200 to 300 zone here. We have the 20 simple, that is the basis band here. So, understand that when we're looking at volatility metrics like the standard deviations, first, second, and third to the downside, first, second, and third to the upside for the Bollinger Bands here, we're looking at, more confluence, but in this case, when price is starting to move to one of these zones, the available volatility zones may encompass other support areas. The support areas are still valid. You still use them as conditions, close above, close below. You look, above or look below. But the bands are giving us volatility zones of interest as it relates to those areas. So above is the basis band. Be very good for Bitcoin bulls to recover this basis band here at around that 60,002 to 300. And if we did see Bitcoin recovering above there on a daily close, that of course would technically set the low on a close and a higher low swing here if it did it right over the weekend. But again, I want to see it closing above this 60,600 close open to go test 61.8 and then 62.8. Any closes above the basis would give us a volatility zone of interest. Well, guess what? Guess what, even right there at the top side of our recover zone, meaning we need to see this area recovered, and that is 63.8, where the upper first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands is coming in. Any closes above there would give us the volatility range right up to the next level, essentially between 65.5 and that 67,272 by the upper second. And of course, any closes above there, even in the lower term timeframes as it relates to the daily, we're looking up to the run the highs above here zone. That is our 68 to 70 by the upper third. To the downside, if we see closes, even in the lower term timeframes below the daily, at I would say maybe 4 hour, 6 hour to be safe. I of course will be much lower time frame than that, but 58,400. Any closes below there, and I'm looking down to the lower first, which just happens to be right around this current low side structure, and that's at 56,850 or 800. 56,850. Anywhere below there, we're looking right down to that support, 55,850. And then anywhere down below there, guess where the lower second's coming in? Right at this wick low at 53.5. So any kind of closes in back below 55,850, like I said, we have confluence down here by the lower second for that 53.5. You can start eyeing this close open. We do want to see closes above there if we did start seeing the bears push past this to preserve the potential higher low on a close structure. Anywhere below there, and guess where the lower third is? Hey, it just so happens to line up with the next zones. And no, this is not planned. I didn't. Anybody who's seen me make these charts knows that these confluences will occur a lot. And the lower third is right there at that $50,000 to $53,000. Of course, it's at the bottom side there at $50,000. So, that's kind of the available areas. But one of the things that I want to note, and we're going to turn off the accumulation distribution stuff here, is that Bitcoin is lining up for a bit of a contraction phase here. It is sitting above its lower first. It's kind of tight to the basis band. You see that we went into expansion. So we had the compression here, the expansion down, mean reversion. Now, I'm going to tell you from professional and personal experience. You see closes below the lower first, most likely going for the lower second to retest. Lower second's right around a previous low. If it consolidates and starts to squeeze into the bands, and typically, not always the case, but typically when you see a compression beginning like this, and it's not actually coming in and already very deeply compressed, these areas typically act as support for second, third to the downside, and the first, second, and third to the upside will typically act as resistance upon first pass. I want to be very clear, upon first pass. If you start seeing closes below the lower second, lower second's down here, start seeing closes below there, typically it's going to be re-expansion, probably go test the lows until we get further compression to the upside, same deal. Probably testing, even if it got closes above there, it's probably testing the upper third. And then probably coming back down for some mean reversion and some compression. So, I don't think Bitcoin is going to make a big bad move anytime over the weekend in terms of a trending move. Maybe it sets something up for next week. It's got a wide range of volatility. I mean, at the extremes, 53.5 to, all the way down to 50. To the downside, and at the extremes to the upside, we're looking at 67 to that essentially 70,000, just over $70,000. So that's a wide range of volatility, and when volatility is high, price can move a little bit more freely through that volatility. But another thing, kind of backing up, that this is likely going to remain, and I could be wrong, but as it stands right now, it's likely going to remain a little a little bit contractive here for a little bit. Maybe that means we get a quiet weekend. Is that BBWP is under the moving average and it's moving down quite quickly as the bands are kind of contracting in this sideways and down move. So after that lower high, let's go ahead and look at BBWP real quick just to kind of get a gauge on it. And then we're going to wrap up with momentum and then kind of what to look for on the weekly. And then I'll let you go. Yeah, well, it's kind of going flat. It does look as though it wants to go back into a compression. It's already gotten its mean reversion back to the basis band here. So even if it came back down below the lower first, we're probably going to see this cool down again until we see a little bit more compression. That's just my general rule of thumb when evaluating it. Now, of course, this is just my personal, quick take on volatility very specifically. Don't take that play in and of itself. Everything that I just said earlier about trend and support and resistance still applies, and everything is still conditional. Close above a level, look to the next level, close back below that level, look to the level below, so on and so forth. So that is kind of how I look at all of it. And of course, the trend, support and resistance, and volatility make up momentum. Here we do have the regular Stoke. You can get a free Stoke. Just go to the indicators tab and search for the reverse Stoke panel. And you can get a free one. This is a fancy indicator by KVDB over there at Eric Crown's. It's not Eric Crown. Is it Eric Crown Crypto? I don't know. He had to move his site. So you can find him somewhere. He's got a YouTube and he's here on X as well. But 56,400 is the pivot. Momentum is pointed to the upside on the daily. Let's take a look at one other time frame. I want to see the 12-hour pointing up, and that's going to be an early indicator that the daily might get follow through to the upside. But the 12-hour as it stands, there's two 12 hours in every daily. We're in the first one of the Saturday candle. It's $60,000. So it's fairly close to the pivot right now. 12-hour is in a compression. So, yeah, I mean, if we start seeing Bitcoin close back above the basis, it's got a chance to go test around $60,000. Starts closing above there, and especially anywhere above 62,800, that would be expansion on the 12-hour, and that would get follow through to the upside with the daily. That would set higher low structure on the daily. That would break out of this short-term downtrend on the 12-hour as well. So that does also mean that any closes back below the low there at that 56,120, it's the same on the 12-hour as the daily. That would be re-expansion down to retest the lows. There is a 12-hour low that was, or not really a low. It's more like a swing high to low. Did it get a closing high? Yeah, it actually did get a closing high. So this is a valid low on a close as well, not just a swing. But that's right around, right around that daily that's coming in the 55 area. So that area could get swung. That's fair game. If it does start to, again, lose this wick low on the daily, that's the current low of the move since putting in the lower high at 56,120. I would be looking down to this low side structure. Any breakdowns from there, we're looking to the lower low again. So that is something to watch over the weekend. Structure doesn't look too bad. It's in a compression, obviously. But we want to see momentum turn up. We want to see it put in a technical low. So you're going to want to see $60,000 closed above, essentially, on the 12-hour, and then have that lead into the daily. So that's pretty much going to wrap up all of the main analysis. Now, one thing to look for on the weekly is we need to see the weekly closing above the lower second. You do not want to see this closing below the lower second bulls. I'm telling you, it can salvage itself, but you don't want to see volatility expansion. It's not going to look good. It would indicate that things are going to test this, our 55,850 and lower down here to, 53.5 and the actual lower low at 49 and possibly even lower. If that was to occur, we'll talk about this on Monday. If we do see any closures below the lower second at 56, guess what? 150. It's right around the current low. So any closes below this low at 56,120 on the 12-hour daily over the weekend, be aware. That would be below the lower second on the weekly, and that would start to dramatically increase the volatility expansion on the weekly to the downside. And bulls, you don't want to see that. That does mean that you're in for quite a long ride. That doesn't mean that price necessarily gets shaven down like that dramatically past electrical cost, or electrical cost trending down for a significant period of time, but it does not look good. It would start to look like daily distribution. What bulls would rather see is a close above the lower first here. So baby steps, right, bulls? 60,000, 1 to 200. So again, back above and into the recovery zone at that 60,000 to 60,300. Of course, it needs to take out that 60 to 800 area. Here on Coinbase, it is 60 to 755. Technically, that would set a higher low close. Yes, it is a lower low swing, but a higher low close. And then we could start eyeballing that basis band right around $64,000. And then from there, the lower high on a close at 68, 1 to 2 to that $70,000. Essentially, $68 to $70,000 is the last lower high, and this lower high at $70,000 is the lower high that needs to be closed above on the weekly to then start testing further up to the all-time high zone. All right, I'm going to leave you with that. You all have a wonderful weekend. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe, and of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out.